are ye? Happy Tuesday. The weeks are beginning to feel a little bit long, which is good in a way because I get lots and lots of stuff done when I'm not in and out. Usually Wednesday, Thursdays I go on the road, and then Friday's sort of admin and prepare for the following weekday. So I'm actually getting an awful lot more done now that there's no gallivanting on the road. So we were talking yesterday about the new online course, which contains all the implements to get you building a portfolio with minimum money down. So as I said, I'm not crazy on the phrase no money down because I feel like it's a bit misleading. Some things you need to, you might need to pay a deposit for something and get the money back when you finance it at its full value, when you've added value. So I don't like the phrase no money down, but minimum money down. I mean, even when people say no money down deals like rent to rents, you have to decorate them and you have to furnish them and everything. So they're not no money down. There may be no money left in the deal after 6 months or something like that, but they're not no money down. It is possible to do no money down deals, but they're few and far between in my experience. So yesterday we went through the first 2 modules of building a portfolio with no money down, minimum money down. So we'll just run through the conclusion. So the first section of it was why build a portfolio in Ireland and what are the realistic expectations. So I'll just call you out the conclusion. So by the end of this chapter, you should understand the scale of returns that can be made from property rentals in Ireland and how each strategy pays different returns. Understand how much or how little you need to do with the work yourself. You understand the tax implications. You understand why you have a gold mine area, the type of property you would and you wouldn't buy, and you understand how to outsource the hard work. And then the second section is titled Building a Portfolio with Little or No Money Down. So we were coming into what does that mean? So by the end of that, you are understanding how people are building portfolios without saving up to 30% deposits constantly. You're understanding what the phrase no money down means. And as I say, it's something people use loosely because there's very, very few deals you'll go into with no money down from the get-go. You might get your money back out. That's more what it means. You understand the traditional ways versus the creative ways to finance purchases and why the creative ways speed up portfolio building. So this is oversimplifying it. But no matter what kind of salary you're on, if you have to save 30% every time you want to buy a house, you're going to be slow. Even if you take an average purchase price of 200,000, that's 60,000 plus costs plus furniture. You're not going to be doing one of them every 3 months. So the creative ways to finance things, like adding the value before you finance them or getting a lease option on something and renting it in the meantime, all of that type of stuff is going to speed up hugely how fast you're able to go. You'll understand by the end of section 2 why the UK model with the bridging finance, the equity release, means you can easily recycle money over and over again. You understand that we have to be more creative in Ireland because we've only one interest-only product and we have no equity release as of 2020. You understand the concept of adding value and buying below market value, and you understand the difference between owning and controlling property. So then on to stage 3. So module 3 is creating cash flow without owning the properties. So an awful lot of people are mad to get into property, but they're actually not going to be able to buy things for quite a while. So a lot of the no money down courses in the UK, I suppose, focus on these strategies, like rent to rents, etc. So let's just pick a section. So section 3 includes word of caution on replacing your salary. So I would always say to people, just because you've enough money to live off from rents, you've effectively cut off the mortgage markets. If you're a new landlord and you don't have accounts for a couple of years, you're not going to be getting any mortgages. So don't be too hasty to jump into this. What I notice generally is rent to rent appeals to people more sometimes who don't have a brilliant job to start with, or they want to get out of the job anyway, or they were taking redundancy anyway. If you have a really good job which is very mortgageable, do not be too hasty to leave that job unless you're joint venturing with someone who can then get the mortgages, because you're going to have a problem continually getting more. You're going to have a problem getting any mortgage if you're not able to show your salary. in what they consider a safe job. So it also goes through rent to rent, the good, the bad and the ugly, rent to own and tenant buyers, delayed completions, lease options, combining lease options with tenant buyers, vendor finance, which basically means you're getting the seller to finance you until you're able to pay them. It might be over 7 or 8 years. So let's just pick one slide and go through it. We won't focus on rent to rent. I'm not a rent to rent expert. But I do see all the pitfalls. One that's kind of interesting, I suppose, is combining lease options with tenant buyers. Now, obviously, we only have time for a quick flick through here, but this is a very interesting scenario because you are solving a problem for somebody else. You're getting one of the best type of tenants you could, and you're also have very low money down. So imagine you were renting a place at say $1,200 per month with permission to sublet. So you'll have this all written into the lease that you've permission to rent it on, and maybe a lease option to buy it at €160,000 valid for 4 years. So a lease option is an option but not an obligation to buy something. Whereas if you have a delayed completion, you're obligated to close. A lease option is an option, not an obligation. So then supposing you spend 5, 6, 7,000 cleaning it up, maybe a new kitchen painted, and you fit some small repairs. And you've added 20,000 to the value. But hopefully you'll have negotiated your lease option. Because you're going to start paying rent straight away, I wouldn't expect you to be paying a lease option at probably the full amount it's worth anyway today. So it might be worth 170, you've agreed a lease option at 160, and then we're going to add value as well. So you're going to, say, spend 5, 6, 7 and add 20,000 value. Our rule of thumb is to try and treble what we're spending, remember, in the adding value. Now you have a lovely presentable house which you've control over but you don't own. So you could now go and find a tenant buyer who agrees that it's worth 190,000 in 3 years' time. They move in, they take over the rental payments and maybe a bit as well. They pay down money on signing the contract. It might be 10%, it might be 20%. And also they'll top up their rental payments every month with an amount towards the balance of the deposit. Now, if I'm dealing with the tenant buyer, I'd like them to have 20% paid before the closing date came. Even though I know a lot of first-time buyers can get 90% now, who's to tell when that could change? They really need to have 20% paid to allow for different eventualities. And there mightn't be both first-time buyers if you have a couple, etc. So you're actually cash flowing positive money every single month. And all you have to do, there's a lot more to it legally than this, but the moral of the story is that you need to make sure that at the end they owe you at least as much or more than you owe the person with which you're executing the lease option. You need an assignable lease option, and I would keep a gap. So if my tenant buyer was due to buy at the end of 2020, I'd like to have the lease option for another year just in case they pulled out. But imagine you can sell a house without owning it at a profit, and you can also collect the rent for a couple of years. And some of those solutions are really, really great in that you're also helping somebody get on the property ladder who probably has deposit. Lots and lots of young people have a good chunk of their deposit saved, but they actually can't get mortgages. Where if they could get into a steady situation like that and they knew where they were living, they'd be able to then focus fully on saving mortgage payment. Not saving mortgage payments, preparing for a mortgage. So they'll be able to focus fully on what does the bank want to see, how can I get that, what if I don't have it, and all of that type of stuff. So that's section 3. It's creating cash flow without owning the property straight away. Now section 4 is earning lump sums in property to finance deposits. So if you don't want cash flow and managing things, well, honestly, if you don't want what I've just mentioned, are you sure this is the right course for you? Because you're probably not going to like tenants either. So you need to you probably will be into all these things if you're happy to build a portfolio and that's your plan. And obviously that's why you're looking at this course. Module 4 is if you feel like you could earn 20 grand here and there and speed the whole thing up. So Module 4 covers deal packaging, assisted sales, flips, with investor finance specifically, because I'm assuming the whole reason people are doing the course or they're looking for the minimum money down thing is because they don't have huge deposits at the moment. So let's just pick a slide now out of this. So deal packaging, as we know, we've a different course on deal packaging. The outline of it is that you can earn 3,000 to 5,000 euro per deal by packaging deals. So you go off and do all of the hard work for somebody who tells you exactly what they want. So what else? That would be small lump sums but consistent. You could probably package, when you'd get really into the flow of that, you could package 3 or 4 deals a month. But let's pick something else. Say a joint venture with someone else who has deposits. So as you get on this far, you're sort of towards the end of module 4 of this course. You've probably listened now to maybe 20 audio files and 30 or 40 slides. So you're getting a fair idea now of how this whole thing works and where the magic is happening with the lower deposits. So by now you're beginning to realise the huge potential of all of these different strategies for lump sums and income and building a portfolio. And you're thinking, as always, back to the whole time, money and knowledge. Which of them do you have, and do you have 2 or 3 of them? So let's assume that you have the time and the knowledge. You're obviously building the knowledge doing this. You're creating some time in your week. So having the money, I would say, is split into 2 categories in a way. Do you have deposits is one part, but can you borrow is the other. Now, I can't emphasise enough how much you need to double check this, because I chat to people every single week who assume they can borrow. They tell me I might get a mortgage. I say, all right, and have you approval in principle? Oh, not at all. They just assume they can. Mortgages are much, much harder to get than they were 15 years ago in Ireland. You really cannot just assume you're going to be getting a mortgage. You need to go off and actually start applying for mortgages. They'll only be on certain properties, your income guidelines. You mightn't be meeting the income guidelines. There's a load of reasons you mightn't be able to get a mortgage. I would say go to a couple of lenders and apply for a mortgage. They'll ask you what you want to buy. You're going to have to pick a sample house and run through the whole procedure. But you may be able to borrow then. You may discover you're able to borrow, but you don't have deposits. So what could you do about this? So one of my suggestions is that you might be able to borrow and someone else might have lump sums. So for example, I've lump sums. I could pay deposits. But because I got lots of write-offs on my own stuff in the difficult times on shortfalls, I'm not able to borrow again yet. So you could pair up with somebody and do a joint venture with someone who can't borrow but has deposits. And very few people actually have all the ingredients of time, money and knowledge. And as we say, money, people have maybe can borrow but they've no deposits, or else vice versa. You could pair up with somebody and you can set up a company to reflect the fact that the one person is owed 50,000 back. So I'm not going to pay a deposit for something and then go into a company and the other person says, well, I got the loan and you paid the deposit. That's not fair. I would assume that I'm owed my 50,000 back as well. I brought that, they brought their lending, but we're both going to pay all of the interest and everything out of the rent coming in. So you can set up a company, no problem at all, with somebody. If the person cannot borrow, you might leave them off the share. They mightn't be a shareholder in the company, and they might not even want anybody to know they are in the company. A solicitor and accountant will be able to fathom that out for you. You can balance up all of those type of things to say someone owns a third of it, or he put in 20,000 but he actually put in 40. It's much easier to do that in a company setting with directors' loans, etc., rather than if you're doing things privately. So if you're aiming to build a portfolio with little or no money down, you could do something like this for 3 units. It doesn't mean just because you set up a company with somebody and you buy a couple of units that you can never ever do anything with anybody else, or that when you get your credit sorted or you have your deposits made, you won't be able to branch out on your own. Most people I know who are in this game for a long time, they've some joint ventures and they've some stuff on their own. So think multiple JVs with somebody. It's not a marriage. You don't have to stay with them for 30 or 40 years, but it's a really good way to get started. So I hope that's a useful suggestion on module 4, which is how to earn lump sums in property to finance deposits. Tomorrow we will talk about buy, refurbish, refinance and building a power team, and maybe even squeeze in finding deals and how to negotiate. That's kind of a long section, but I know that you'll be fed up listening to me before Friday. So guys, I hope you found that useful. As you know, the whole course is available now online. Pop me a private message, anyone who'd like to receive the full contents, and otherwise I'll see you here tomorrow. Have a brilliant afternoon, and I will follow up. I know some of you have emailed me about the Raising Investor Finance workshop on Saturday morning, which is outlined on the page. I'll be following up now in the next half hour. Thanks a million, guys. Take care. Bye.